I'm not a huge fan of the Call of Duty franchise. I'm not much for playing online multiplayer, which is Call of Duty's bread and butter. But despite that, after going through a list of Call of Duty releases, I found that I played most of them from one time or another, but never on the release date. I usually wait a year or two before getting them on sale for two reasons. The first is the campaign, which is always generally very short but action-packed, like a Michael Bay movie on steroids. Number two, the zombie mode, which is always incredibly fun. So when Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War released in 2020, I didn't check it out right away. Now, 4 years after release, I'm going to talk about it.
Turn around! Show us those hands!
Don't do anything stupid.
I heard you a mile off. No offense, if I'd meant you any harm, you'd already be dead.
Call of Duty Cold War was released in November of 2020, initially for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and the PC. It later got a release for the next generation Xbox Series X and S, as well as the PlayStation 5 with graphical improvements and higher frame rates. Cold War was developed by Treyarch and released during the time when Activision was still doing their annual release schedule for Call of Duty games, with different studios alternating development on upcoming titles. I played it on the Xbox Series X in August of 2024. This review is going to focus on the campaign, the multiplayer, and the zombies in 3 easily digestible chunks. So let's hop right into the story. Cold War's campaign continues the story of Adler and his group of CIA agents in their quest to prevent World War III and nuclear Armageddon. If you don't really remember the story from the previous Black Ops games, don't worry about it. You don't need to have played them in order to understand what's happening here. At worst, you may miss out on some of the character interactions or the insider information, but that isn't going to affect the story much. Like other titles in the series, you play as multiple characters throughout this 5 to 6 hour campaign. That's right, the campaign is pretty short, but it's fun, action-packed, and well told with that characteristic Black Ops crazy intrigue, spy shenanigans, and unreliable narration that could easily descend in unbelievability, but they play it straight enough that it feels like it has serious stakes. Cold War takes place in the early 1980s during the Reagan presidency. The Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union is in full swing, and this is a time when spies and the importance of the CIA was at its peak. You play as a new member of their squad, Bell, whose background is something you get to choose, and whatever you pick has minor effects on the stats and bonuses you get in the game. It's nothing game-breaking, but it is enough to give you an advantage in certain areas. The story of Cold War boils down to this. There's this terrorist group that is trying to sow even more discord between the Soviet Union and the USA by planning to detonate a nuke inside a NATO ally country. The nuke in question belongs to the US, and it's part of this secret plan to plant a nuclear weapon in every NATO country in the event that the Soviet Union attempts a ground invasion and territory is lost. In that situation, the US government can just blow up these nuclear weapons and drive the Soviets back. Somehow, a terrorist named Perseus got his hands on one of these nuclear weapons, and President Reagan authorizes Adler and his CIA agents to do whatever it takes to get it back. So you travel to various locations like East Berlin before the wall fell, communist Cuba, and inside the Kremlin itself, trying to chase down leads and find the location of Perseus. During this campaign, you'll pick up intel that will assist you in 2 optional side missions, one requiring you to decrypt a disk before catching a rogue agent, and another is finding the identities of these 3 Soviet agents before moving in on their ringleader. Every time you play the game, this intel will be different, so there will be a different rogue agent or a different decryption for the disk, meaning there's no one answer for everything. It's not anything elaborate or groundbreaking, but it's fun extra content. The campaign can be a little confusing at times if you aren't paying attention at the beginning of each mission, when it tells you who you're playing as, since you're going to be jumping between characters at times. This even includes an undercover Soviet agent that's going to assist Bell and Adler getting inside the Kremlin. The final thing I have to say about the campaign is that it's pretty hilarious how these covert Black Ops missions and these agents absolutely mow down everything in sight. Like, stealth is built into this game, But you do leave behind so many bodies that there would be just no denying American involvement in the things they are doing. This isn't like a James Bond movie where 007 is doing spy stuff, he's playing cards, he's wearing costumes to get inside places. This is like just pick up the biggest gun you can and kill your way inside the building and then get out again. It's those kinds of Black Ops missions. So that's the campaign in a nutshell. But the multiplayer has a brief story as well. It's sort of like a continuation of the main campaign, since its multiplayer is not really designed for people who care about the campaign much. So the information inside of it is pretty sparse. There's a reason for this. There are stats for most Call of Duty games, and they say that less than half of the people who pick up one of these games actually play the campaign. And of those people who do start the campaign, very few actually finish it. So the multiplayer does have a story, but it's very light. It's mostly just an excuse to get shooting. Then there is the zombies storyline, and this one is wacky. Nazi experiments with the dark aether led to zombies being everywhere. There is a story built into the zombie campaign, but to see it, most of it requires a team of coordinated players willing to complete each of these maps, something that's going to be very hard to do with randoms you pick up on the server. But if you do have 3 friends with Cold War, Zombies makes for an enjoyable story about the end of the world from a zombie apocalypse.
Germans and Russian friends.
Yeah, some of us do.
Что бы там ни было, счетчик у Гейгера это не нравится.
What the hell is that?
That is why you needed to see the tape. The machine.
Эй, ты, за пультом! Сдавайся! Сдавайся, сказал!
Diving into the gameplay, obviously it's a first-person shooter, that hasn't changed. The main campaign has about 10 missions plus the side missions that take you all across the world. Most of these missions involve running in, shooting, killing stuff, blowing stuff up. But a few are more slow-paced, requiring more walking and spy-oriented stuff, like the mission in the Kremlin where you have to take out the double agent, plant evidence on a fellow general, sneak into a server room and get a key for Adler and Bell, whereby then you switch over to Bell and then just kill everyone inside a bunker in this massive shootout. Since shooting is a major part of a Call of Duty game, you have a variety of weapons to choose from. And I'm happy to say each feel really unique and have good, quote-unquote gun feel, if that's a phrase to use. Look, there's nothing worse than playing a first-person shooter where the guns feel weak or sound like pea shooters. Cold War doesn't have that problem. To sum it up as simple as possible, guns shoot good. After the 5 or 6 hour campaign, you can play them over again, maybe you choose a different route, there are multiple endings to get, and you can pick up collectibles during your gameplay missions for your side missions. Moving over to multiplayer, this one is more of a mixed bag. Like I said, personally, I'm not a huge online shooter person. I play them sometimes, but there are a few things that I dislike in multiplayer online games, and unfortunately, they do rear their ugly head here in Cold War. Let's start with the servers. When I tried to play, I had trouble finding a match in the multiplayer in every mode available, even the quick play that should link me to a match quickly since I didn't really care what type of game I was playing, I just wanted to get online. This isn't a strange thing to encounter, particularly for a 4-year-old game. The player counts aren't super high in Cold War, and I was playing during the weekdays and not the weekend, which will probably limit player counts even more. But it does suck when you wait for a few minutes at a time for a match and never do get one. And when you do enter, you get booted. But if you can find a match, you can play from a large number of game types and maps. There are even some super fun, cheesy modes like Prop Hunt, where you try to find players that are hiding as objects in the environment. But if you don't want to play online, or you can't find a game, don't worry about it. You can also play against bots, which is what I was doing in the clips you're seeing right now. If the AI looks brain dead in this gameplay, that's because they were set to the recruit difficulty until I could learn the maps and modes, and then I ramped the difficulty up from there. Overall, multiplayer is very fun, and it has good movement speed and kill times.
Requiem strike team. The traitor Valentina is somewhere in Berlin.
Finally, there's Zombies, which is my favorite multiplayer experience. This one I actually had a lot more luck finding matches for than the regular multiplayer. There are a bunch of different missions to choose from, maps and modes, and even an arcade game comes back from the previous titles. This arcade game arcade mode is a top-down shooter that plays like, you guessed it, an old arcade game. The missions go in order, so if you're looking for the story, you can follow them like that, or you can just pick whichever without any difficulty. This is where playing online is a hit or miss. Playing with randoms can be good at times, or horribly bad depending on your luck. If you're looking to do the story or complete the missions from start to finish and then exfil, randoms probably aren't going to get at you there. Zombies can be hard for a full squad and impossible for a group of uncoordinated people who just want to stay in the starting zone and kill zombies. Each of the maps have multiple areas to explore and unlock as you progress, with new weapon upgrades available. But you can also just stay in the starting zone if you want. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. All the zombies come in waves and they get progressively harder to kill as you mow them down. So you'll be slaughtering them down in the first wave, no problem, but you're going to get quickly overwhelmed after 5 or 6 rounds if you don't upgrade. I would recommend playing Zombies with a group of friends who all have microphones and voice chat. It's fun craziness that doesn't take itself too seriously, but can still be incredibly creepy. The maps are great, each are well designed, and they fit a theme perfectly. You have things like Berlin on its last legs, Cuba overrun by zombies, Vietnam. The campaign for Zombies takes you across a lot of maps from the main storyline, but they're set in this zombie apocalypse universe.
I've already submitted the requisition for my team.
Sir, their requests are highly irregular, most likely illegal. If the press gets a hold...
What the hell are you talking about? You know who we are?
Every mission we go on is illegal.
Sergeant Woods, plausible deniability is the backbone of our work.
Al, we're talking about preventing an attack on the free men and women of the world. Give Mr. Adler whatever he wants.
I can't speak to how Cold War performed technically at launch, but I'm happy to say it's pretty good now. The graphics are stunning on the Xbox Series X with detailed environments and character models. 60 FPS feels smooth and good, with only a few slowdowns when there's a lot of action on the screen and you're going from hip fire to using a scope. Artistically, the levels are really well designed, from cityscapes to Soviet installations and mountaintop retreats. It's Call of Duty, it looks good and it plays good. Money was obviously spent and spent well on making Cold War look its best. There are a lot of expensive tracks in this game, leading me to think a lot of the budget has gone to licensing them. There are scenes set during the Vietnam War that use familiar music from the 60s, and then parts are set in the 80s, and that has a soundtrack to match as well. I obviously can't play any of it on my channel or I'll get copyright struck, but you're going to recognize a lot as you play. The voice acting is really good, with Adler and his team made up of many returning voice actors. And Ronald Reagan, who is an actor, returns for his role. I thought the guy was dead, but he must have recorded his lines before he died. Obviously, that's sarcasm. It's an actor. They do a very good Ronald Reagan impression.
Gentlemen, you've been given an important task, protecting our very way of life from a great evil. There is no higher duty, there is no higher honor. And while few people will know of your struggles, rest assured, the entire free world will benefit. I know you won't fail us.
Here's my conclusion to Cold War. It's a great addition to the Call of Duty franchise and another banger for Black Ops. I would rate it an 8.5 out of 10, but I would recommend you pick it up on sale. Here's the thing about Call of Duty games. They are expensive, even years after release. To pick them up digitally, you're looking at $20 or $30 for an older release. But they are very popular, and I'm sure you can get a physical copy used for a very decent price. Even if you don't want to play it online, there's a lot of value here in just the campaign and the zombies. But the best part is, if you have a friend and an extra controller, play couch co-op. I'm the Casual Console Gamer, and I'll see you all in the next review.